I recently did a super detailed video talking through the entire thought process about putting together a gaming PC in the $1,000 to $1,200 price range, responding to a lot of viewer questions, and ended up with a great build that is going to be far better than a PlayStation 5, but honestly it costs a lot more. And I had some comments on that video saying, let's look at some other price ranges. Some people want me to go super duper high end, and some people were like, can you do an ultra budget build? What if you came in around the price of a gaming console? And that's what we're gonna look at in this video is, there's gonna be some serious sacrifices we have to make if we're gonna do this. And while I will be looking at new prices in this video, I really wanna draw you guys' attention to the fact that honestly, once your budget gets to a certain point, really buying used is going to be far better value. And today's video sponsor, Jawa.gg, which you can find in the pinned comment and video description, is going to be a place where you can buy, sell gear with other gamers and really get some much better deals than what you'll find on the new market. And again, you can sell your current hardware to fund that upgrade. For example, especially in today's video, where we're going to be looking for a low-priced video card, a lot of times, especially if you're looking for an Nvidia GPU, there's not a lot of great options. Their 4060 comes in at $280, but what if we're trying to do a $500 build? We might not be able to fit that in there. Now, if you go down to something like AMD, you might be able to get away with an RX 6600 for $190. But if you're willing to take a look at the used market, I wonder if we could get a 2070, which is going to be a little bit faster than a RX 6600 from AMD and have the Nvidia features like DLSS upscaling, which can massively boost performance and with a better image quality than AMD's FSR does. And we're looking like here we can get these for less money than we could a new RX 6600. And you can also look at entire pre-built systems, and a lot of times you can find some really good value there as well. So you can follow the link in today's video description and be especially on the lookout for amazing Black Friday deals at Jawa.gg if you're looking towards that part of the month. Again, follow the link in the video description. Now, we're going to take a look at what kind of sacrifices do we have to make to take a almost $1,300 PC build down to the $500 price point, and it's going to be painful. For one thing, one of the big things I focused on in this build was that I wanted to get onto a new motherboard platform that would support future CPU upgrades for a long time to come. And unfortunately, that comes at a price, and I just don't think we're going to be able to support that in this build. So we are going to edit this part list, and unfortunately, we are going to have to lose the Ryzen 5 7600, which was over $200. We're going to have to lose the motherboard that goes with it, which was $145. And you know what? I think we're going to have to find a CPU that comes with a stock cooler, so we're going to lose that as well. And you know what? We're not going to need DDR5 memory because I don't think we're going to be affording a DDR5 motherboard. So we're going to have to make some big cuts there. Now, also, there's no way we're going to be fitting a $550 graphics card with the RTX 4070 into this build. We may be able to fit in some storage like this. We might have to cut some corners there. And while I do think that this case and power supply combo are great value and good quality, we're gonna have to cut some major corners here as well. In fact, this SSD might be the only holdover from this build. This is going to be painful. Let's go ahead and see what sort of CPU platform we can hit. Now, you have an AMD or Intel choice at this point, but since we can't get to the latest AMD platform, I'm going to be less attached to going that route. CPUs like the Ryzen 5 5600 are still quite good gaming CPUs. Looks like we could get there at $146, but this might still be out of our price range. If we go back to Intel, we can check in on the 12400. That's still $140. What about the 13400? Oh, wow, that one's $200. We might need to go down to the i3s. So a 13100F is $119 right now. A 12100F is down at $95. Okay guys, this is gonna be painful. This is a 4-core, 8-thread CPU. Now granted, those cores are individually pretty fast, but this is a massively painful cut compared to where we were. However, our motherboards we get here should still be able to support some CPU upgrades, although you're gonna have to be sticking to Intel's 12th, 13th, or 14th gen CPUs. But $95, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna go with an Intel build this time. Now, again, you can go some AMD routes, and if we end up finding some extra room in our budget, this will be something I'll look at, hey, maybe we could get something a little bit better to fit. Now, this should come with a stock cooler, which, while it's, it's not gonna be the quietest and coolest cooler in the world, in our budget, $20 or $30 for a better cooler is honestly too much of our budget for us to spend on that. We do need a compatible motherboard, so I'm gonna sort prices low to high and see what we get. So it looks like the cheapest one is an H610 motherboard, but there is a B660, a micro ATX version available at $10 more. Now $10 in our budget here, we do have to think about, but man, maybe we can fit it in. Now, I'm not a motherboard expert, so honestly, when you're looking at motherboards, you're gonna actually wanna look a little more carefully at what sort of in-out, USB features it has. If you have to have Wi-Fi, you will have to pay a little bit more for that if you can't reach an Ethernet cord. Some of them have different amounts of RAM slots, different amounts of M.2 slots. One thing I'm noticing on this B660M board is it at least does have 4 RAM slots. Whereas it's looking like we'd have to pay a lot more to where we find the next board up that is offering that. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and slot this one in. It does have at least a few user reviews that seem positive, and away we go. So we've got our CPU and motherboard combo. We're not gonna go with the cooler. Now we need some memory. Now, while Intel's 12th gen had some, is compatible with some DDR5 motherboards, I believe this one's gonna be DDR4, and PC Part Picker here should be filtering out for what we're compatible with. Yeah, this looks like a DDR4 board. And I do think that we should get at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. So we could do 2x8. You do, with DDR4, you absolutely want to be in dual channel mode for performance reasons. So we'll get 2 8GB sticks, and I'll compare the price to what it would cost to go up to 32 gigabytes, which would be nice, but again, we have to cut a lot of corners on this type of build. So also when looking at RAM, you want to look at not just the quantity, but also the speed. Higher speed better, cast latency lower is better, and both of them apply to the first word, latency. So what I'm noticing here is that the absolute cheapest one is only DDR5 2400, but we can get DDR4 2400, we can get DDR4 3200 CL16 for $2 more, but then I'm not seeing any major speed improvement from there without paying a bit more. Now 3600 CL18 I think has similar, ends up being similar latency to 3200 with the CL16. So I'm just we're gonna go cheap here, guys. Every dollar counts in this build. Now, I mentioned in my other video that when you're looking at RAM compatibility, you can look at your motherboard's QVL list, qualified vendor list, for memory sticks that have been confirmed by the manufacturer to for sure be compatible. However, if you are within supported speed, memory speeds of the motherboard, in general, the memory should usually work, even if it's not specifically listed on the QVL list. But if you want to play it extra safe, you can buy off the QVL list. Okay, so here we are. We're at $262. We do have a nice fast Gen 4 SSD drive. But guys, every dollar counts. I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at what would it take. Now, I know every dollar counts, but I want an SSD. We're not going with a hard drive. A lot of modern games just literally do not support a hard disk drive. And also, I don't want to go to 500 gigabytes. like with the size of modern games, I just think that you really just will hate your experience if you don't have a terabyte. You're gonna fill up 500 gigabytes so fast with the operating system plus 1 or 2 games. I just don't think it makes sense. Now let's check if I sort prices low to high, what we see here. So there is a 960 gigabyte Western Digital Green SN350, which is a PCI 3. If I remember right, the speeds aren't terribly slow. It's only $35. So I know it would be nicer to get this Gen 4 drive, but it's looking like at like $44 versus $35. Every dollar counts in this build. We're trying to target $500. I'm gonna slip in the cheaper drive for the sake of our dollar count, because where are we at now? We're at just under $300, and we have everything except for a case to put it in, a power supply to power it, and a graphics card, which is the most important piece for a gaming PC. So I'm trying to get our overall platform as cheap as I possibly can while still being fairly modern stuff. That isn't going to be a complete disaster. My biggest complaint right now is the 4-core CPU. I don't love that. We'll see what we can do if there's any dollars left over at all, if I'm trying to hit a $500 price point, but I'm not sure there will be. So let's see what the cheapest case and power supply that I can stand is going to be. So I'm just going to go cases, sort price low to high, and see what pops up. Okay, I don't know much about this Roseville case. It is a mini ATX tower. I would like to get at least a mid tower. So the next one we're seeing is $5 more, and it's Fantex. I actually do like Fantex, and this one does say it comes with 1 fan. 1 fan is not a lot, but the parts we're putting in this build are not very power hungry. They don't, like, the amount of watts you're using is how much heat is going to be put out into your case. So if there's not a lot of heat being put out into the case, then if you have a mesh front panel and a little bit of air pulling through, I don't think we'll be necessarily thermal throttling due to the case, and you can buy some cheap fans later to add to the front for not too much money. This does come with at least 1 fan to pull some air through that mesh panel, and this case is only $35 because of currently a promo code right now, I think. So I think we are gonna go ahead and go with the Fantex case here. I'm not a case expert. It's possible one of these other cases is more reasonable, but guys, this is actually one of the cheapest ones on here from a decent brand with at least 1 fan, mid-tower case, because we're getting this current $15 off promo helping out. Okay, so we're already up to $333 almost. We need to fit in a power supply. So we are gonna try to filter out complete junk, but we can't be too picky on the amount of wattage, which does limit future upgradability, but we have a budget to stick to. So I'm gonna filter for at least 80 plus bronze or better. Now, keep in mind that these are efficiency ratings, not quality ratings. So it doesn't mean that things with these ratings aren't complete junk, but it does help filter out some of the complete junk that didn't bother to get some of those ratings. I'm gonna sort prices low to high, and just see what we can get. Now you'll see that there's some of these higher wattage parts, but some of these are from lesser known brands. And I'm seeing a Seasonic pop up right here, and Seasonic has a very good reputation. This is only 500 watts. It's not modular. It does have 18 user reviews here at 5 stars. I'm not a power supply expert. I do recommend that you, if you want to look in more detail at what, how these things rate, the Cultists website has a PSU tier list that is worth checking out. Now, when you're at a certain budget, you can't necessarily get an A-tier PSU, and you also might not necessarily need an A-tier PSU. But it is a good way to filter out what's complete junk and what's not. And if you're looking between a few different options at a certain price point, it can help sort those things out. Now, the fact that this is one of the lowest price options at all along with the fact that it is from a reputable brand with decent user reviews. It's only 500 watts, but that should be all we need. I'm going to add this, and I'm going to point to the fact that our estimated wattage right now is 183 watts without a video card, right? So we are going to add in a video card, but in this budget range, we're not going to be looking at super high-powered options. So I think 500 watts should be okay. It's going to significantly limit our upgradability potential for the graphics card in the future, which is a major trade-off to make. Anyway, so this brings us to $390, which means that if we want to fit in a graphics card here and hit our $500 price point, oh, good. I accidentally left in two of the SSDs. My goodness. Okay, I felt like we were off my budget target here. Okay, that just saved us some money because I was gonna say we're not gonna fit in a $110 GPU and get anything worthwhile. Okay, with that extra SSD out of the list, how many of you guys caught that earlier and was like, Daniel, you idiot, what are you doing? Anyway. We are now at $343. So this leaves us about $160 to fit in our video card. Now, like I said, if you go the used route, and like I said, today's sponsor Jawa, you might be able to fit in something like an RTX 2060 for RTX 2070 for $160, $170 and hit that $500 price point for the entire build in budget. If we're going to go with new parts, I think we're gonna have to look the AMD route. New parts, we could look for something like an RTX 3050 from Nvidia. That's coming in at $200. The 4060, like I said, which is the lowest price 40 series GPU, is up at $280. This is just out of our price point if we're looking at a $500 build. If we go for a A750 from Intel, it's looking like those right now at around $220. The A580 is a recent release from them, and I'm not seeing them in stock at the moment. So I think our next bet is the RX 6600 from AMD, which is $10 less than the RTX 3050 option and performs better. So if we go ahead and pop over to, this is the Tech PowerUp GPU database with relative performance chart. And this really, one thing to keep in mind here is like game by game, these can vary. Like this isn't perfect. Also, I think this is really taking into account rasterized performance, not ray traced performance. And but it gives you a general ballpark figure of how a whole bunch of different GPUs stack up. So if we look at this, the RX 6600 is, compared to the RTX 3050, if we go ahead and take a look at that, if I said RTX 3050, according to this, we're seeing about a 26% faster non-ray traced gaming performance on the RX 6600. Now, I think at this performance tier, you're honestly not going to be looking at doing a whole lot of ray tracing on an RTX 3050. In general, you'll be turning down settings and still possibly using upscaling just to get good performance. And oftentimes, quality upscaling might gain you something like 20 or 30% performance in a game. Some games more, some games less. But that just gets you to about even performance with the RX 6600, which costs $10 less anyway. So I think if we're looking for strictly gaming performance per dollar, at the types of gaming workloads that we would be using at this performance tier, I think the RX 6600 is making the most sense out of the value options we have available here. Now, that does put us to $533, which is a little bit over our budget. So like I said, if you did want to go with the Nvidia route, I think buying something like, the problem is, see, if you try to go with the 20 series new, the prices are ridiculous because this is just old stock that's just still listed somewhere, right? But if you go, like I said, with today's sponsor Jawa, something like the 2070, something like that, if we compare this, then if we set the RX 6600 as the baseline, then a card like the 2070 is actually similar performance, possibly a little bit faster when not ray tracing. is definitely faster when you are ray tracing, and you get access to the DLSS upscaler, which I'm assuming we're probably targeting 1080p with this build. And I'll be honest, using FSR2 upscaling at 1080p generally does not look very good. And using DLSS at quality at 1080p doesn't look great, but it's a lot more usable than FSR2 quality at 1080p. At the lower your resolution, the bigger I think the image quality difference between the two upscalers stands out. If you're up at 4K resolution and comparing quality upscaling, it's still advantage DLSS, but usually not by a wide margin. At these lower resolutions, it's a wider margin. So, anyway, with that being said, I think those would be the routes to go. And like I said, that would also shave just a little bit off the budget. And in general, we could be looking at more used parts thrown into the mix, or buying a whole used pre-built system and all of that. So that gets us to around $500. Now, my overall thoughts on this, though, is you need to seriously consider whether this makes sense to you, because buying a gaming console for $500 offers you better performance if console games are what are the experience that you're looking for. The reality of the situation is, because some people are like, it makes absolutely no sense to build something in this budget range. And my answer to that is, because they're saying just buy a console instead. Okay, fine. But not every game is a console game, right? If you want to play Counter-Strike, you're not going to be doing that on a PlayStation 5, right? There are certain gaming experiences, or some people need a PC for, for school, work. You need a computer in general, and also make it one that can play some games, right? Or maybe you're playing older games, and the PC library back catalog of older games that will run super well on this hardware is massive, and a lot of those games, aren't console games, right? So there's a lot of reasons why it still could make sense to build a PC in this price range. Just be aware that the PlayStation 5 is going to be more powerful for less money if you're playing those same types of games, and that's the experience that you're looking for. Now, if you did want to upgrade this build from here, guys, I really don't like this 12100F. I don't like being on a 4-core CPU here. So if you could spend a little bit more money, I think going up to a 12400, at a 12400F at $140, this does push us closer to the $600 mark, but having at least 6 modern cores feels a lot better to me. And if you preferred, you could go an AMD route here along the lines of a Ryzen 5 5600 and going on to a cheap AM4 motherboard could also make a lot of sense there, and that gives you an upgrade path to something like a Ryzen 5800X3D, something like that. So those are other options you could play around with for this build. And then from here, if you have at least a CPU on this level, you might want to look at spending a bit more on the video card. You could scale up from here quite a bit, but again, you start getting more money. And if you eventually scale up the CPU and video card too far, we might need to go with a higher wattage power supply. What do you guys think about this build overall? I'm curious how many of you would go with a higher wattage, but from a less reputable brand power supply, something like that. What are your thoughts on the cheap, CPU range and all of that? I think there's definitely a lot of different routes you could take in this price range. But anyway, I think that's most of my thoughts on the matter for today, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.